third race weekend of the 2020 FIA WTCR, and we're back at the Slovakia ring. Last time Nürburgring, this time Slovakia ring, a week from now Hungaro ring. Yes, it's a ring cycle. Mikel Ascona, fastest of all in the new shape Cupra, ahead of a trio of Audis, but with a Lynk & Co. Their fastest, Santi Arusha, was inside the top 10, but at the track where they stumbled and fell last year, they don't appear to be doing much better this year. Is that all down to the weather, or is it a perennial problem? Hello everybody, welcome back as we get ready for free practice 2. Audi looking to confirm their position at the top of the pile, but with the Cupra of Mikel Ascona going fastest of all, let's see if Alex Le Gui can shed a little bit of light on what we might expect from what is still a dry Slovakia ring circuit.
Hello from the pit lane. It is indeed still dry here. Apparently it was going to rain, but actually now it looks like it's scheduled for about 7 o'clock this evening. So we might find it skips qualifying as well. Good news on the Lynk & Co's. Looks like Ted Bjork's looking pretty sorted for FP2s. He will be happy. Had a quick chat with Mikel Ascona, who was very, very pleased and says the car feels fantastic. And obviously the Audis are also very happy because they looked like they are going to have a nice quick weekend too. Other than that, that's about it from the pit lane.
It is not raining here also. Fans of Tony Hancock will recognise that. Santi Arusha, you just saw there limbering up, the young Uruguayan, the fastest man for Lynk & Co. Martin Haven and Richard Coleman watching the action with you, with Alex Down patrolling the pit lane. There's Benza Boldic, who was very quick in his Cupra as well, inside the top 10. And this Cupra, Benza, saying, big step forward, Richard, from the previous model. And we're now into that second generation of TCRs coming along, and everything that you know gets sort of encapsulated in the new car.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the DNA of this championship is sort of road production cars that are governed and regulated to try and stay as close to the road-going cousins that you and I drive. But of course, as time moves on, the clever engineers find ways and means to make them ever closer to a racing car, and you know, that's very clear to see in these latest iterations of TCR cars.
And of course, road cars don't get any slower or any worse as the generations progress either, Mark III Golf accepted, obviously. But so the road car moves on, and the racing car aerodynamically and so on, and dynamically does as well. And you learn more about transmission efficiencies and about suspension efficiencies and so on. So every car should be, in theory, a better platform than its predecessor, and then of course the regulations try and rein you all in and sort of cap the performance to a level that everybody can achieve.
Of course, this weekend the balance of performance system that we use in touring car racing to keep it as close as possible comes more into play, and I think that's why we saw a very mixed bag in free practice 1, and that's a theme I'm expecting throughout the weekend. I think it's going to be very close, and perhaps some of the stars we've seen at the front of the grid aren't necessarily going to be there this time around, and it'll be how many points can they pick up on what will be a difficult weekend for them.
Yeah, that's going to be absolutely key, isn't it? Particularly for Nesta Girolami. There you see him in his Munich Motorsport Honda, currently tied for second in the championship with Ted Bjork, behind Yann Erlaché. If Armel are just 1 point behind them in 4th place. Well, let's hear from Ted Bjork. Had a very interrupted free practice 1.
Paul, are we thinking about throwing a practice start in at the end, or what's the plan for that? Let's see how it goes, but it's negative at the moment because your last runs will be on new tyres. Run out of time if the plan currently goes as it is. We'll have to see if there's a red flag or something that mixes it up a bit.
Nate Berton being pushed back into the garage. Bizarrely.
So Ted Bjork talking to his race engineer Paul Ridgway there. He's just trying to work out if he's going to have time in his run plan to get a practice start in. Of course, there aren't many opportunities to do a practice start, and generally the teams like to sort of limit them anyway because it stresses a lot of the transmission out. A lot of load goes through the car, and a lot of the parts in the transmission are life for a certain number of race starts. but his engineer's sort of saying, well, we plan to run new tyres at the end of this session, and therefore, you know, those flying runs is not going to have time to start into the pit lane and do a practice start. But interesting to hear, though, that effectively Ted's going to be doing some qualifying laps or simulation laps at the end of this this session.
Well, I think everybody is, because when we get into Q1, it's not just about getting into the top 12 and moving on to Q2 and then trying to sort yourself out a position in Q3. Q1 will set the grid for race 1 tomorrow, so there are points for the top 5 as there will be in Q3. Yann Lachey with more points than anybody else from the 2 qualifying sessions that we've had so far. Last time out at the Nordschleife and at Zolder, the series opener, and with more points from the races as well, has a substantial championship lead. Lots and lots of very close battles behind, though. And as you say, Richard, with the BOP changes coming in for everybody but Hyundai here this weekend, then we should see some of those battles starting to change. Audi looking very strong in first free practice. Fastest lap was from a Cupra, and that was really one exceptional run put together by Mikel Ascona. The Audis were second, third and fourth. Hyundai also looking a little bit like Lynk & Co, like they need to find some more speed. Honda, right until the end, when the Hondas were all slipstreaming each other, they too looked like they could do with a little more speed. And on this relatively high-speed track, slipstreaming definitely is going to work. Gabor Kismati, car all back together, so the Zengo Motorsport drivers won't have had very much lunch. Gabriele Tarquini, you saw his wife there. Gabriele also going off in his car. And you can see that they're all going out in team formation. So Yann Lachey towing Ivan Muller, towing Ted Björk, towing Santiago Urrutia. And this will be a rehearsal for qualifying. And immediately Ted, no, well, that wasn't Ted, that was Yann coming back into the pit lane with the yellow windscreen strip.
Of course, I always still think of the 68 synonymous with Ivan, but obviously when he took a step back for a year, his nephew nabbed that number. Yeah, I think this circuit isn't traditionally a towing circuit. It's far too technical, and what you gain on the straights, you generally lose in aero wash in the constant radius corners and a bit of distraction as well. Drivers never like to admit that, but it is very distracting having to follow a car at close quarters through the twisty stuff. That said, Martin, I just think that brands like the Lynk & Co, for example, who've got the maximum compensation weight. In fact, they've got so much weight on the car, they can't take it all as weight, so they've had to take a 10 mil ride height penalty at the front of the car. We're into a situation where these guys have probably got to look at the box of tricks to get this man that we're watching here, Yann Lachey, up the front. He's just at the moment coming in and swapping the tyres front to rear. Of course, these days there's a ban on tyre warming, so it's all done by the driver. And of course, the front-wheel drive car loads the fronts, and that tyre's been asked to sort of brake, steer, accelerate. Very easy to get temperature into a front-wheel drive touring car. Not so easy to get it into the rear, and that's why sort of did it the wrong way around for that opening lap, just so you can get the tyres nice and balanced for a longer run.
Yeah, heat in the rear is critical. Stops the car backing off into the scenery. So Nicky Katzberg here in his Hyundai. He was on pole he was the fastest man in both qualifying sessions last year, on pole for race 1 and for race 3. Of course, the race 2 grid, as last year, will be, as the traditional 3-race format, will be the reverse of the top 10 at the end of Q3. The race 1 grid will be the positions at the end of Q1. And then, of course, if you are in the top 12, you progress to Q2, and so on and so forth. So it'll be the top 10 at the end of Q2 that will be reversed for Q3, or the end of Q3 that will be reversed for race 2. Mikel Ascona, fastest man in the first free practice, now with 2 purple sectors, 2:22.2 top speed. That's the fastest I've seen on my screen so far. So he is absolutely flying. And who was that going off onto the grass, going into turn 13 behind him? That's really staying out of the way.
this circuit with these big, long, constant radius corners, you sort of have to pick your line and speed a long way before you get to the corner, and that's why sometimes you just see the driver run out of road at the end because he's effectively picked that line. There's nothing you can do. As we watch Gilles Magnus scamper around the outside of, I think, turn 1, is that?
Yeah, but did you see he's following wheel tracks that have already been left on the grass by somebody else? That's, in fact, the final corner, wasn't it? Yeah, because he's come round into the pit lane. And the final corner, turn 13, just sort of is a never-ending right-hander that then tightens at the ending. So it's not one you can really V off as racing drivers like to. You have to just kind of live with the understeer all the way through.
The gravel beds are exceptionally deep here, Martin, and
Yes.
that's why you'll see a lot of people trying to scamper around them because, enter them at your peril. There's a good chance you won't get back out and you just beach the car.
Mikel Ascona fastest at the moment from Norbert Mikulits, Nicky Katzberg and Gabriele Tarquini. They were all together in their Hyundais, but Peter Fulin in his Cupra wildcard this weekend. The driver from the Czech Republic, very experienced here. He's done a lot of European touring car racing. He's raced in WTCC and WTCR before as a wildcard. And this is his traditional annual appearance, if you like, and with a new Cupra, he's really producing the speed. He and Mikel Ascona first and third. And I did mention actually in the first free practice that yellow clearly goes well here because last year the DHL cars of Tom Coronel and Aurelian Panis were flying. Then they weren't Audis, they were Cupras, they were the old shape Cupra, but they were both very quick here. And this year the yellow Audis and indeed the black and yellow and red Audi of Gilles Magnus all going strongly. They haven't produced the speed yet in this session, but undoubtedly they will. Tom Coronel currently 7th fastest, and Norby goes fastest of all. Now, was that a tow or was that a lap on his own? And Gabriele Tarquini 3rd fastest. I think those were laps on their own. Gilles Magnus comes out behind, on board with Norby. And again, historically, Richard, there would be an awful lot of Norby fans here, second only to Hungary, with the high concentration of Hungarian fans, because, whoa, has a Tarquini moment in turn 2. Because we are actually quite close to Hungary here.
You've got a lot of choices to make when you make that mistake there at the exit of 2, because on the one hand, if you get sideways into that gravel trap, it's the kind of thing you could end up on your roof. So you've got to try and keep it straight, but then, like Norby there, just really struggling to do so. And I think watch out for that theme even more when we're racing. But yeah, sorry, Martin, as you were saying, this part of the world has a really great history of touring car racing here in Slovakia, of course, across the border in Hungary, and of course the Czech Republic also. And yeah, great tragedy that this event is being held behind closed doors for all the obvious reasons, but I'm sure that all the viewers will be watching the television sets and cheering on the local heroes.
And of course, lots of Hyundai fans will be having one weather eye on what's happening in Rally d'Italia. I don't think Andrea Adamo was really expecting all his touring car drivers to become part-time rallyists as well. Last year, Gabriele Tarquini actually competed in Rally d'Italia in a Hyundai, but he's not in Sardinia this weekend. Obviously, he's here. However, they've all so far been through the gravel trap. No, I think even Nicky Katzberg has at turn 2, so they've all had a bit of an off moment there. Norbert Mikel is fastest from Mikel Ascona, Gabriele Tarquini and Luca Engstler. And just ahead of Luca goes Nestor Girolami, so he goes 4th quickest. Tom Coronel purple in sector 1. Stand by for a quick lap from the Audis. No, held up by a slower car in front. That's Peter Fulin, isn't it, I think?
That's one theme to look out for in qualifying. We've seen this a number of times. Drivers are very unsighted in a lot of these corners. It's great from those long panning shots, but you get these very, very long corners, and you're very committed to your pace, and you just don't see anybody in your mirrors. You know, you look behind you, all you can see is a bit of the racetrack, but actual fact you're holding somebody up, and we've seen that a couple of times. We've seen drivers get penalties as a result of getting in people's way in qualifying.
Well, Coronel Won't be best pleased with Peter Foulin, but actually still managed to set the fastest lap time there. And we also saw, didn't we, in the top 5 shootout, a multiple world champion meandering around and ruining somebody else's lap.
Yes.
Without any penalty.
Yeah, and that's something to watch out for. It's easily done here, although the team should be able to manage that. All these cars have GPS, and there's a little faux circuit board on the pit wall where you can see where all the cars are.
But even so, it's inherent in the driver when you've completed your fast lap to be quick back to the pits and stay out of somebody else's way. Tom Coronel fastest of all from Norbert Mikulits, Mikel Ascona. Nate Berton fourth quickest in his DHL Audi. Where's their teammate Gilles Magnus? Well, yet to set a competitive time. 2:23.6 Gilles Magnus though across the speed trap. That's the highest speed of all. And here comes the blue phalanx. Ivan Muller goes 5th quickest.
Yes, they were cold.
No, didn't get that. I have something or other with tyres. I didn't understand that, I'm afraid. I do often wonder what sort of... whether the transmission is just as garbled in the engineer's headset as it is when we hear it. Because a lot of the time...
It generally is.
I suppose a lot of the time they know what the conversation's about, whereas we just maybe get the answer or one comment.
Yeah, of course they have the context, but you know that's why often we hear drivers giving a radio check, and some of them have become amusing and become memes and stuff from Formula One and everything else. But it's generally because you know it is an issue. You know, communications. You've got a lot of RF frequencies, not just everybody's radio, but you've also got all the communications devices. You've got the Wi-Fi, you've got the garage setup, you've got all the stuff that you set up the car. It's all run off radio frequency stuff, and yeah. This circuit's very low and flat, but you go somewhere where there's a load of trees and places like the Nordschleife, you know, you can very often have radio black spots.
Well, it seems that Ivan Muller was asking if the team were sure the tyres were cold. Well, surely he should be able to tell, shouldn't he? I don't know. Anyway, again, context is everything, as with everything. So Tom Coronel, fastest of all from Norbert Mikulits. Gilles Magnus, that lap he's completed 3rd fastest in the Audi. 4th Mikel Ascona, 5th Nate Berton, 6th Ivan Muller. And Ivan was at the front of that queue. So he's at the front, giving away a tow to all his teammates on supposedly cold tyres and goes quicker than any of them. That's presumably why he was asking the question.
Katzberg running a little bit too wide there. Looks like he's perhaps pushing on a bit too much too soon.
Yeah, 6/10 slower than the fastest first sector time as well, so that's not helping him much.
And this is one of the classic circuits that does not reward overdriving. There are several circuits, like where we were last weekend at the Nordschleife, that you can really sort of, you know, hassle the car around and perhaps deliver a lap time beyond the car. But in this circuit, you just rewards being smooth, consistent, taking as little lock as possible, taking as little out of tyres as possible. And Katzberg, this does not look a tidy lap at all. You know, he's had a couple of puffs of smoke from the front, running wide, and he just punishes you.
Well, he's at least gone from 20th or whatever to 9th, but you're right, that's definitely not a pole lap there. Not that we are in qualifying yet, but even so, you know, we're working up towards it. There will be a little more track temperature, hopefully, although there's not an awful lot of sunshine around, a bit of hazy low cloud. No time yet from Attila Tashi in the 4th of our Hondas. Esteban Guerrieri has not set a competitive time either. His only full lap, 13 seconds off the pace. That's my sort of pace, arguably. I would consider myself to be doing quite well if I was 13 seconds off the front-running pace in WTCR.
Martin, look there, all that gravel on the exit
yeah.
of 2.
Gabor Kismati went off in turn 2 in FP1, did quite a bit of damage, but seems to have all been corrected.
Of course, historically we've always raced much earlier in the year here at the Slovakia ring. And despite the fact it's relatively warm today, nothing like some of the summer temperatures we've seen in the past, and of course the weather not looking as good for tomorrow, which could spice things up even more.
Yes, we did. We've had, you know, plus 40 degrees and torrential rain on the same day here in Slovakia before now. So we know that it can definitely rain. And the problem here is actually we're in quite flat, low-lying farm, not low-lying, but flat and not undulating farmland. And so you can see the weather coming a long way away. A little bit like Moscow Raceway, you can see a really heavy storm. And unless you spend a lot of time at the track, it's probably quite hard to define how close or how far away it is. Silverstone would be another good example. You can see the rain coming a long way, but we have spent a lot more time at Silverstone, and you can kind of gauge how fast it's coming. It's a little bit more difficult here because they don't tend to come too often.
Yeah, my office is at Silverstone, and I can generally see if I've got enough time to walk and get a sandwich before it rains. I'm quite adept at that. We're on board with Esteban Guerrieri. It's definitely a team that knows it's under pressure to deliver this weekend. They definitely need to get some points on the board, and they need to hope for perhaps a little bit of lady luck to strike where their competitors are a little bit heavier, namely the Lincoln Co cars. You do feel that the Honda setup isn't perhaps as joined up in its thinking as the Lincoln Co. It seems to be slightly more independent thinking in run plans and how things progress throughout the race weekend, whereas you feel that the Lincoln Co. is a far more cohesive environment, which also gives you other problems. You know, I'm not saying that one is right or one is wrong, but it's definitely a key difference between those two teams.
And yet now you would think with all the cars being run, all the Hondas being run by Munich Motorsport, that should be more cohesive. Last year, Tashi and Thiago were run by KCMG, under the KCMG banner by Yas Sport, and Munich Motorsport were running the two Argentine drivers, Guerrieri and Girolami, and you would think that there should be more of a swirl pot, if you like, of information going together, but maybe they are still operating a little bit more as two independent teams. But, you know, if you've got four cars battling for the manufacturer, you sort of need them to work together. BRC do that with the four Hyundais, Lincoln Co. do with Cyan Racing with their four cars. And, you know, we've got these two Audis for with Come To You, but Gilles Magnus, the third Audi driver, although he's not nominally part of the same, quote, team, definitely you imagine that all three sets of drivers and engineers are sitting down and working out how they can make the Audi better than the other cars, because in the end it benefits all the Audi drivers, doesn't it? You know, if you can all gather together to make the Audi a better car, then one of you Audi drivers has got a much better chance of winning the race. And then you back yourself to beat your teammates.
Definitely, and a lot of the sort of questions of political and how things funded and resourced, and lots of other sort of, you know, nuances and intangibles that add up to something. But yeah, you definitely feel that one of the strengths of the Lincoln Co team is that it's, you know, one team, one vision, and there's a strategy, whereas, you know, the other teams perhaps are only playing the tactics of the given day.
I tell you what, Nate Berton is ringing another fantastic lap out of this car, isn't he? Purple sector 1, purple sector 2. And top speed as well, 223.6 kilometers an hour, purple all the way round, 4/10 faster. And so Jean-Carl Vernet no longer on target to go top of the pile in the Alpha. Esteban Guerrieri looking to improve though. He moves up to 6th position from 22nd, so that's a big step forward. Jean-Carl Vernet third at the line. So Audi, Alpha, Hyundai, and Luca Engsler finally has the big moment. Just avoids that ditch that did whatever it did to Gabriele Tarquini's car. But that is a very much Hyundai off-road section of that gravel trap. They've all been out there. Right on board. I don't know if they are auditioning, all of them, to be part of Hyundai's World Rally team, but they've certainly got a handle on how the car is on the gravel.
Norby, focusing on sector 1, what is the problem? We need to improve sector 1 because we have no wear there, and we are very competitive in sector 2 and 3.
Turn 2, I cannot do flat because of rear instability.
Well, there you go. That is the key to sector 2, to sector 1, isn't it? You know, you can take speed into turn 1, but that's not a very quick corner. But we've seen all the Hyundais, more than anybody else, flying across the gravel because they're trying to carry the speed they know they need in turn 2.
Yeah, and that's the sign of a team that's under pressure. And you know, we believe you, Norby, because all three of your teammates have been off through the gravel there. One of which doing fairly considerable damage to the car. Here's we just watched the replay of Luca Engsler just popping off, and that was the most innocuous of the three, but you could see that the others were very close to having a much bigger accident, and he just doesn't have the confidence in the rear end of the car through there. And it's a big part of the lap time because it's a slingshot effect corner. You need to carry the speed in that part, and obviously the Hyundai struggling with rear end stability. Speaking of rear end stability, Luca Filippi nicely demonstrating what that actually means, and I mean, I think that's one of the areas that is key to a lap time around here. We heard in free practice 1 Ivan Muller making some camber changes only to one side of the car because he knew that he needed that rotation through the inside, but he needed rear stability, he needed the opposite for the first part of the lap, and it's a very distinct sector 1, and that's clearly where Hyundai have got the most problems at the moment.
Riding with Nesta Girolami down to turn 13, turn in here, and wait, start to pick up the throttle, now it tightens. It's a little bit like Variante Ascari, where it's so late you think there's no corner left and still you're waiting.
Yeah, patience is a virtue on this circuit, and that's why historically we've seen sort of the older front-wheel drive touring car specialist drivers do well here. I think we're slightly skewed by the way the weights are working this weekend, but I think this is definitely a circuit that totally rewards patience.
Fastest at the moment, Nate Berton, Tom Coronel and Jean-Carl Vernet, so Audi Alpha. Is it alphabetical order? Not quite, L should be before U, shouldn't it? Peter Foulin in his Cupra, where's he slipped down to now? He's 18th at the moment. Better sector 2 going for him, but sector 1 wasn't great. Let's see if he can carry a bit more speed onto the next lap. Lovers of Eastern European military hardware, it's always a good tramp around outside corner 13 and 14 where those big hangars are. All sorts of interesting bits and pieces turn up. Michele Ascona. Now, is he having a bit of a control-alt-delete moment? That looks like a driver looking down inside the cockpit rather than a driver who is recovering from having a moment. And Tom Coronel, although he has gone quickly, we gather may be having drive shaft issues. Nate Berton coming back into the pit lane. Tom, of course, with drive shaft issues. In fact, that's Tom Coronel coming back into pit lane. Tom with drive shaft issues at the Nürburgring. Red flag is out for Michele Ascona's car, which has become abandoned. Well, it hasn't become abandoned. He hasn't abandoned it, but it has come to a grinding halt.
The good news is, if that is the stoppage reason, it shouldn't be too long before we're up and running again. This could, however, give, excitingly, Ted Bjork his practice start opportunity.
Yes. Well,
do not collect £200.
Everything just switched off all in one go there. He wasn't like revving the engine, and he was trying to chunter down the gearbox and nothing was happening. I was going to say it might actually take a while to get to him because rescue vehicles and cranes and flatbeds and so on tend to be where people have crashes rather than in the middle of a straight or between corners. However, they're going to stick him on a toe.
Yeah, clearly rolls. One thing here, Martin, is that because a lot of the corners are the same radius, it's actually quite difficult to work out whereabouts stopped cars are.
Yes.
There's very few landmarks on this circuit. Yeah, it's a slight worry for Ascona. He's been going obviously very well this weekend so far. He obviously topped the timesheets in this morning's practice session, and we hope that that's not an engine change, etc., because they might struggle to get some of that done ahead of the all-important qualifying session. But yeah, he's been pretty racy so far this weekend.
In other news, 2012 World Touring Car Champion Rob Huff, who's currently battling in Knuts. No, not Knutsfjord, is he? Where are they? Anyway, for the Swedish Touring Car Championship. One race left in the championship. It is very wet, and he is tied on points with multiple champion Robert Dahlgren. So quite a lot left for Rob Huff to try and gain in the final race of the weekend, and indeed of his season. Wow, they've managed to... Now, did he control all delete and actually get it to start? They didn't pull start him, toe start him, did he? So he's obviously got the engine to fire up on its own accord.
I'm a little bit rusty on my rule book, but it always very much used to be the case that if you were the cause of a red flag, you couldn't rejoin the session.
Yeah, I always think if it's, you know, if you've crashed, then that's possibly justifiable. If the car has just ground to a halt underneath you, as was clearly the case, this is clearly not driver error. But as Mikel Ascona gets back into the pit lane, we should go green again. So whether he'll just carry on and try for another little run or not, we will wait and see. The car is clearly quick enough. Jean-Carl Vernet was in the practice start box waiting to go when the red flags came out, so they're now pushing him back. Jean-Carl Vernet appeared not in person. It'll surprise you little to find out in Copenhagen last night, but he was on tape for the launch of Pure ETCR, the new all-electric touring car series, which will make its competition debut, or is scheduled to make its competition debut, in the WTCR season finale weekend in Adria. Looking here at Peter Foulin. And Luca Filippi, this is the final corner, turn 13. Just goes on forever and ever and ever. See, there is a little cut through there. From turn 3 to turn 13, so you can sort of make it basically a triangular oval track. Not that it's banked in any way. Ideal for when NASCAR comes. Possibly, what would it be? Maybe 3/4 of a mile tri-oval. So 5 minutes 32 seconds on the clock. And Jean-Carl Vernet now being pushed all the way back. Having been in prime position for going out fast, the Alfa Giulietta is now being pushed all the way back to Romeo Ferraris. So just double checking the belts for Mikel Ascona, because chuntering back to the pit lane slowly is one thing. Going out and laying it on the line in turn 2 with loose belts, highly not recommended. So as soon as Jean-Carl Vernet is back in herringbone formation with everybody else, is that herringbone? Yeah, it is really. Then we will be set and ready to go. Of course, his tyres have now gone cold. So we go green for the final moments of free practice 2. That was only a 30-minute session to start with. Again, the Lincoln Co cars all heading out together. Followed by a brace of Hondas. Luca Engstler for the next brace of Hondas. I wonder who he's hoping to pick up a toe from. So final couple of minutes of free practice. Richard Coleman, traditionally this is where your engineer will give the driver a chance to try one last qualifying run. I wonder what Link & Co are doing.
Okay, so this is the new strut tyres on the front, the same rear anti-roll bars down, wing up and zip down as we discussed, one time lap. You're going position 4 in the tight.
Jan's engineer there sounding like he's run all the way from the circuit hotel just to radio that message.
I mean, it's hard enough for me to interpret the changes you just reeled out, and I'm not driving a racing car in formation with my 3 other teammates, but from what I can understand, he's gone stiffer on the rear bar and a bit more wing. I think with the new tyres, he's just expecting a bit more grip, that he can lean on it a bit more. But he still needs that all-important rear end stability, which is why he's got a bit more rear wing for the high speed.
And of course, with the ride height being raised by 10 mil on the Link & Co cars as part of balance of performance, it raises the roll center, and that makes the car roll more, and that means you want to have your damping stiffer and your springing stiffer to resist that roll. And then you've also got to stop the car bouncing from ripple to ripple, so damping becomes so important, and that extra little bit of rear wing as well, although it scrubs off some speed because you've got more drag, probably doesn't scrub off quite as much as if you're hanging the tail out. Ted Björk, number 11, first in the queue, ahead of Santi Arusha, Ivan Muller and Jan Erlaché, has dropped to the tail of the 4. And again, now I'm sure they'll be looking to do this in Q1 when they've definitely got all 4 cars there. 5 points up for grabs for the fastest car in Q1.
Yeah, it's just that, like I said, towing isn't always a given here. You know, we don't always see people towing, so they definitely want to be trying this now in free practice 2, and then they'll have a huddle after this and say, okay, are we gaining more than we're losing? And it's quite clear, I think. Oh, bit of oversteer there as we ride up with Ivan Muller there. You see the wheel not quite describing the radius of the corner there. But this is what I'm saying. I think there's obviously a preference now that the championship favourite is Erlaché, and therefore, you know, that's why he's running at the back to get the most aero benefit of this train. But it's tricky because there's just so much constant radius corners where you don't get the aerodynamic benefit. So it's not clean cut, and that's why they obviously want to be trying this now.
And it's sort of, you want the slingshot down the front straight, and that's really where we've seen it, you know, giving a toe and then pulling to the right-hand side down the front straight. And again, Tarquini very eager to avoid that drainage ditch that put him out of FP1. Another Hyundai out in the gravel. And that is clearly the Hyundai line, and they don't seem to be able to solve that problem yet. Purple sector 1 from Jean-Carl Vernet, already quicker than anybody has gone so far. He is 3rd quickest in the Alpha. Don't forget, Alpha won one of the races last year, won race 2. Of course, that was from 10th place in qualifying for Martin Qua. No, he didn't, won race 3, I beg your pardon. Race 2 was a Honda win. So Van Muller, 6th quickest, Santi Arusha 15th. Luca Engsen 12th place. Everybody with quicker laps coming at the moment. Erlaché and Björk were no quicker in sector 1, despite, well, Björk was at the front of the queue, Erlaché was at the back of the queue, so the toe not working particularly for Jan.
Yeah, it's a tricky circuit to get out to work. They've been spread out at the wrong time. I can see a couple of drivers making a couple of errors.
Yeah.
And arguably perhaps a little too far back. But yeah, it's very difficult. And I think sometimes what you gain in aerodynamic benefit in the high speed, you lose through distraction and wash in the low speed. It's not a clear cut.
Vernet looking for pole here. Sector 2 was not as quick, and sector 3 right up behind the Alphas. Right up behind the Audis, rather, in the Alpha, stays 3rd. So Coronel and Gilles Magnus. Nate Berton is fastest, Coronel 2nd, Vernet 3rd. Esteban Guerrieri and Nestor Girolami 4th and 5th. So the Honda showing pace finally. And Santiago Urrutia in 6th position, again the top of the Lynk & Co cars. Checker flag is out, so this lap only. And Jean-Carl has bailed on that one. But that car has Q3 potential, no question. Question is, will we get a Lynk & Co car in Q3? And if they haven't got the pace now for Q3, as of now, on the speed we've seen so far, there will be no points for Lynk & Co drivers out of qualifying. And there are a maximum of 10 points on offer for the fastest driver in Q1 and Q3. Nate Berton on top of the pile. Did start on pole position for race 2 in Zolder, having qualified fastest of all. Unfortunately jumped the start. Gabriele Tarquini just a little too long on the exit of turn 13. Is that 13 or is that 3? That's 3, isn't it? That was turn 3. So there is Tarquini.
Been expecting more of Hyundai this weekend. Normally it goes very well in the tight and twisty stuff, and yeah, you'd expect, and it's also quite good for their drivers, particularly Michelitz and Tarquini. But yeah, I'd expect a little bit more from them. But we can clearly see from the excursions and some of the radio comments we're getting that they're not happy with car balance at the moment, and you definitely feel they're on the back foot going into qualifying. You know, they need to find some performance, and it's clearly a common trait through all 4 cars.
And you wonder why, because, you know, what's changed from last year? Fundamentally, only track temperature, and they're all on a different tyre. So is it that the Hyundai, you know, they've tested a little on the tyre, they raced at Zolder, they lost an entire weekend. All right, most of it was wet at the Nordschleife, but everybody else spent a weekend learning more about the Goodyear tyres. If it's wet tomorrow, everybody else has raced on that wet tyre. Hyundai hasn't.
Yeah, the tyre points are very, very valid.
Yeah, losing that time on those tyres is definitely not a help.
Of course, some of the other teams not happy with how Hyundai have been sort of treated from the engine calibration and some politics around the Nürburgring weekend, and that's all put to bed now. But of course, cynics could be saying that, you know, that's also why they've lost a bit of performance. But yeah, what we do know as we watch Katzberg this time scampering around the grass, avoiding those deep gravel beds. But yeah, they're not a happy balance there. And this corner is the Achilles heel for these guys at the moment. And
well, if you want to know where their performance is, it's in that gravel trap, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, you know, you heard Michelitz's race engineer, you know, on the pit wall saying, yeah, we know we're in turn 1, what's going on. And, you know, it's very easy, sat in a windbreaker, drinking an espresso on the pit wall, to look at how much you're off in that sector. But ultimately, the drivers just can't get the lap time. You know, it's impossible for those guys to keep the rear end in line.
Yes, unfortunately for the Hyundai drivers, it is full-on Code Brown in turn 2, and they are not featuring at the top of the order as a result. Nate Berton, Tom Coronel, Jean-Carl Vernet, they're the top 3. Honda's next up, best of the Lynk & Co's, Santi Urrutia, the youngest, and Ivan Muller, the most experienced of their drivers. But our points leader, Jan Erlache, only 13th in free practice 2. He was only 11th in free practice 1. Can they find more pace for qualifying? Well, you're going to have to wait until tea time, basically, to find out. 4:30 Central European Summertime is when we will be back with qualifying. That is 15:30 British Summertime, 14:30 Greenwich Mean Time. You can join us for all the action then and see if the teams have managed to figure out where the pace is still to be found. Some of them are doing a pretty decent job so far. Some of them are going to be doing a bit more head scratching. It's not always just the same cars down the bottom either. So 2 of the Hyundais are looking relatively competent. There's Luca Engstler, he's the fastest of the 4 Hyundai drivers. 2 of them are looking very much off the pace. And of the Audis, Nate Berton, Jean-Carl and Tom Coronel, 4/10 apart. Coronel, I'm sure, will be wondering where he's going to find that 4/10 to catch up with Berton. Berton really coming alive in the car this year. And our reigning champion, Norbert Mikulits, 11th. That won't help him much in qualifying. At the very least, he'll want to be in the top 10. Let's hear from Alex.
Well, another very good start to your weekend. Nate, tell us what you've learnt out there. That car obviously looks like it's got some pace.
Well, I think it's for everybody the same. The track is, I don't know why, but the track is not so fast. A lot of difficulties with overall grip. But basically, I think we managed to find a proper setup for this kind of track, so I'm pretty happy. It's not easy to do a fast lap and to do it again. So yeah, a bit concerned for qualifying, but I will do my best for sure. And at the moment, I think we're in good position, so we have to keep going.
We heard some potential issues from Tommy, maybe another drive shaft issue, which we'd heard from you guys in Nürburgring. Do you know any more of this and any issues from the other cars?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm the only one lucky to had not this issue, because Gilles had as well. Well, definitely it's part of the game. We know it's a sensible point for us. We have to work on it. The team worked on it, but it's still not enough. So we have to make sure the car is working well and on the distance as well.
Good. Well, hopefully we'll see you in Q3.
Well, everybody with things to work on. Audi with speed, but with question marks over the drive shafts. Hyundai with question marks over the speed in turn 2. Free practice 2 at the Slovakia ring on a cloudy lunchtime. Still decent temperature in the track, but everybody's struggling to find pace, performance and grip. Gabor Kismati's car, repaired by Zengo Motorsport. Gilles Magnus having a grassy moment and deciding to take it back to the pit lane in his Audi. For Hyundai, turn 2 is the main problem. Every one of their 4 drivers having major moments in the gravel traps. Not a happy car in turn 2. Turn 2 is absolutely critical for pace in the first sector of this Slovakia ring lap. Luca Filippi with a harmless spin after taking just a little bit too much of a liberty corner cutting. Mikel Ascona's car came to a dead halt, bringing out the red flag. Just 5 minutes before the end of the session, he managed to get the car restarted and the session restarted as well. Jean-Carl Vernet going 3rd fastest in the Alfa. Tom Coronel 2nd quickest in the Audi. But 4/10 ahead of him, his own teammate Nate Berton, the fastest man of all, as he topped the timesheets. The Audis have been very quick in FP1. Mikel Ascona got quicker, but the Audis were on top in FP2. But Ascona with that interruption at the end of the session, possibly not getting a fast lap in right at the very end. Expect him to feature, though, when we get into qualifying. Expect the Audis, the Alfa, and possibly a Honda or 2 as well to be vying for the top 5 times. But what about Lynk & Co? And what about Hyundai? Having missed a race weekend already, it looks as though this one might be thin on points for them unless they can cure their handling woes in turn 2. Well, that brings free practice to an end. Next up, qualifying. So join us this afternoon for that. 16:30 Central European summertime, 15:30 British summertime. Till then, from all of us, goodbye for now.